Well, Ron, thanks very much for joining me today. I know it's a little bit early for you on the West Coast. Um, you are my podcast number 8. Hopefully, in a long line and years from now, you'll be one of those early presenters having joined me. But thanks again, for joining me and making time. Um, you've got a really varied, deep background in the healthcare space. I would say you've probably you've done everything except for diagnosing, and maybe you've done that as well. Um, can you give me a little bit of a history about yourself? Actually, I'd love to learn about a little bit about your upbringing. I'm always interested to know kind of, how'd you get to where you are today, and what decision points were key along the way.
Yeah, and thank you, Robert, for inviting me to your podcast. I appreciate it. I did do a little research on what you've been doing, and it's exciting. It looks great. So, yeah, hopefully, I wish you the best in the future that you're doing many more of these. But yeah, my background is I grew up with my father was in the military. He was in the Air Force, and we moved around a lot. So I lived at Air Force Base housing up until I was probably 5 or 6 years old.
Did you say Calgary?
No, I lived on Air Force Base housing. My dad
Oh,
was in the Air
housing. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Got it.
my father was in the Air Force, so that caused us to move around quite a bit. And in some cases, would live somewhere for maybe 6 months, and then have to switch to a different school and meet new people. So, in a way, it was good for me to have those types of experiences because it forced me to be a little bit more outgoing and make friends and learn how to adapt to different school systems and different teachers and different environments. So that helped me, I think, along the way to where I'm at today. And as you mentioned, I've got a wealth of experience with the medical industry. I've been working in it since 1973, and I have a background as a respiratory therapist and a paramedic, and worked in a teaching hospital in the Midwest for 8 years. And that's where I actually made my first invention. And along the way, I've now got 17 patents and been steadily working primarily in respiratory care and in sleep medicine for the
Okay,
past.
so you started your career as a respiratory therapist, and at which hospital was that?
Wesley Medical Center. It's in Wichita, Kansas.
Okay, fantastic. Um, and so, what happened? I guess maybe towards the end of that, you said 7 years. I think that changed directions for you.
Yeah, it was interesting. I worked in a pretty large respiratory department, and I got exposed to a lot of the sales reps that were coming in, and I helped do a lot of teaching and training, particularly for ventilators. And I got to be friends with a sales rep for a large manufacturer. And long story short is they actually brought me on as a sales rep to cover a territory, and then I moved up into product management from there.
And how long were you with that company?
9 years.
9 years. And I'm sorry. And you said you helped develop the product, or they brought you on to help sell and promote one of their product line.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I developed a product that I invented working in the hospital. It was a communication board type product that enabled people to communicate with the staff and with family members. And it was a simple invention, but the manufacturer that made ventilators got to see it firsthand in use in the ICU. And before too long, they invited me to join their company. And then I
So
really
tell me about that platform. Is this before pre-web?
Oh yeah, this was a very simple. It literally was. I interviewed probably 100 patients after they were extubated and taken off of ventilators, and
Okay.
asked them what were their most common things that they were trying to communicate to the staff. And it was like, I'm in pain, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, uh, I need to use the bathroom or whatever. And so I put all that stuff on just a simple laminated, like a piece of vinyl sheeting, and put the alphabet on it, and that they would just basically point at stuff. Because when you're intubated, you can't literally talk.
Yeah.
You can do sign language or point at things, and it's the main thing I took away from that is patients were extremely frustrated, losing their ability to communicate. So this was an easy, simple, low cost way for patients to get things fairly quickly.
Yeah, I don't think mainstream understood the product or the term ventilators until COVID, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, that is unfortunate, but no, that led to my career in medical sales, marketing, product development, and uh, a whole line of products that I've launched and patents that I received on products that I invented and helped build and produce with the manufacturers that I work for.
Well, so tell me a little bit about what are the products you're most proud of that you've worked on since those early days.
Well, you mentioned COVID, so one of the products that I spearheaded and pioneered was non-invasive ventilation, which didn't require an endotracheal tube. You could actually ventilate a patient using a full face mask, and you could take the mask off, and they could drink, they could speak, and communicate. But non-invasive ventilation became a mainstream, and that was something that I worked on in the late 80s, early 90s, and it became a main uh, go-to kind of a therapy for many patients that needed ventilatory assistance.
And was that used quite a bit during COVID? What's the circumstances where that would be applicable versus the full ventilator system?
Yeah, so I did a clinical research project in San Diego during COVID about the incidences that were the mortality and morbidity that was created through intubating patients that had COVID. It actually made them worse. So by intubating the patient and ventilating them under higher pressures than ambient pressure, it actually forced the COVID virus deeper into the lung, and that's what caused a lot of patients to expire or pass away more quickly. So in the study, it showed by switching to heated high flow therapy, it was much more effective, and mortality went down by 70%. So that paper was published, I think, sometime around 2022. And that's now become, through the Department of Defense and through a lot of other agencies, high flow therapy now is the go to therapy for COVID patients.
So unfortunately, that research came I guess a little late during the
Yeah,
pandemic to have an impact.
yeah, it was unfortunate, and it was. I guess the fortunate thing was that there was a database that was shared from Italy, France, a lot of European countries that use ventilators, as well as the United States. And through utilizing that database, coupled up with artificial intelligence, it actually started to assemble what was going on and why these patients were not doing well after they were intubated and put on a mechanical ventilator.
Tell me about another product development or patent that you're proud of.
Probably be like some sleep products that I had worked on again in the 90s and early like 2000s, and it was more to do with mask interfaces. The masks that patients typically wore or would wear were very uncomfortable, and they created a lot of problems with skin breakdown around the nose and facial areas that were sensitive to pressure. So I helped develop a series of different types of masks that were made out of really soft silicone, and those really were a huge breakthrough in making the treatment for sleep apnea a lot more comfortable.
Well, actually, we were talking a little bit about VR in the beginning. There's a soft silicone inserts is kind of a popular use method for being able to share a headset between people and try to minimize infection and contamination issues. I'm guessing
Right.
that probably goes a little bit back. It sounds like a very very similar type of product.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be very similar to what you just mentioned.
So listen, I think you have a vast amount of experience. It sounds like you've been helping a lot of entrepreneurs and startups over the last few years. Um, Maybe can you comment a little bit on is it easier or more difficult today to get a product to market, to get it approved regulatory wise, than it was 30 years ago?
In some ways, it's easier, and in some ways, it's more difficult. Uh, the book that I published a couple of years ago, called "Someday Is Today," goes through one whole chapter is about funding, and another chapter is about the FDA, about regulatory issues, patents, a number of different things that you got to be aware of if you're going to try to commercialize a product anymore. But I still encourage entrepreneurs that have ideas that are clinicians to try to get together with someone that understands the business side of medicine and help them get through the gamut or the maze of things that go on. And I think the most difficult things today, probably, if you're a startup, is funding. Money is incredibly tight right now. It's hard to find venture capital money or even friends and family sometimes for startups, and it is expensive. Just a basic product anymore can cost anywhere between $200,000 and $500,000 to go through all the regulatory processes, the patent filings, building prototypes. Even though I think the big breakthrough in the past 5 years is using 3D printers is a lot better than what I used to use, which was stereolithography. And now today I can make something with a 3D printer, a prototype that's pretty functional. You can't really use it on patients, but you can make something within a few hours compared to it would take 2 or 3 weeks. And it's a lot less expensive. So there are some advantages to working in today's environment, and AI is going to be, I think, a big help in some ways as well to try to determine what's the sweet spot in the demographics and the population that you want your device or your product to really be focused and centered on.
So on the funding side, maybe you're on the West Coast. It's always a little bit hard to have a sense of how fluid funding is from an East Coast perspective, and being in the center of DC. Um, at least from an outside looking in, it seems like there's you know god awful sums of money going into AI left and right. Is are people just jumping on the bandwagon, or is that money that is not being very well invested, and is it taking away from other um, opportunities like healthcare and product investment?
Yeah, well, I think AI in the healthcare space, it's an approach that I would say it's crawl, walk, run, because you've got to be careful in terms of how you apply AI, where you apply it, and what you're offering. And you go on Chat GPT or you go on Gemini or any of these AI uh, models that are currently being used through Google or whoever, and there's tons of disclaimers, particularly if you ask it a question about something related to a medical condition. So I think people they're slowly understanding, and I think AI is getting smarter as people challenge it and ask it more difficult questions. It's learning. But I don't. My wife's a physician. I don't see, for instance, her in jeopardy of losing her job due to AI. I think AI work can help doctors and clinicians is helping them speed up doing routine, mundane tasks that are low risk, and helping them with things maybe like charting, for instance, so they can spend more time with actual patient care or hands-on patient care. But yeah, I think there, like you said, Robert, a lot of money is being put into utilizing AI, but not so much, I don't think, in the medical industry right now at this point. But it probably won't be advancing, and we'll see more opportunities in the future as we get to understand it.
Well, and I've only been traditionally working in healthcare for less than 10 years now. My father was a was a OBGYN. But all three of his sons ended up being engineers, however. But it does seem, having worked in the VR space, it seems like it's extremely hard to bring efficiency processes into the hospital setting or healthcare in general. IT, um, very older systems, and we're just, we have a system that is not working for most, and is extremely, extremely expensive, and insurance keeps going up. And we see, places like the NHS in the UK uh, barely keeping it together. Um, Based on your years and experience, where do you see what's the low hanging fruit to streamline things, or are there so many middlemen involved in the system now that it's almost impossible to fix?
Well, I think the insurance companies are a big part of the inefficiencies. There's just a lot of filings for claims and paper processing, and just a whole maze of different things that hospitals, clinics, and I've owned sleep labs. For instance, you submit a claim, it gets denied, then you've got to have a justification. For instance, why the patient needs a sleep study, or why do they need to go on CPAP, and you go back and forth for weeks sometimes with an insurance company trying to get the patient covered. And the patients get frustrated in the meantime, and they're not being cared for because they're stuck in between their insurance carrier and the clinician or the clinic or the hospital to try to get their care pathway, you know, get it up and going. And I think what you see in Canada and in Europe, like you mentioned, there's long waiting lists for people that need procedures. And I laugh about it sometimes. My brother works up in Canada, and he just told me, he said, sometimes it'll be 6 or 7 months before I can actually see somebody about a problem. And I think what they're wishing for is that I just would either die or go away, or I get better on my own somehow, or pay cash for it. And that's what a lot of patients do. They get frustrated and they finally just say, I'm going to go somewhere where I can pay cash out of pocket and get this taken care of.
Well, and you see a lot of you know perverse effects in the healthcare system. For whatever reason, the last couple of months, I've seen a number of examples where uh, it costs $5,000 to get an MRI if you use your insurance, but if you pay out of pocket, you can get an MRI for $500.
Yeah. Yeah, or an X-ray for $50 or $100.
So do you feel that one of the main opportunities to fix is to go back to a pay as you go service?
Yeah, I I just got back from Mexico and visited a friend of mine that's a nurse down there. She lives in San Felipe, and most of people that are coming down there are Americans, and they're paying cash to get dental procedures, simple surgical procedures done, because frankly, their copay and their insurance here is it's astronomical. Like they have $5,000 out of pocket copays. Down there, they can get a procedure done for a few $100s. And it's they're well trained physicians, and the clinics are nice and everything. So down in Mexico, it's mostly cash pay.
And you feel the quality is
Is good.
just as on par?
Yeah, the physicians are typically, a lot of them are trained in Mexico, but they come to the United States and get additional training, or they do residencies here with teaching hospitals, particularly the ones that are near our where I live in San Diego. A lot of doctors come up and cross train in San Diego at Sharp or Scripps.
If you were a new company and you have a product that you're confident works well and will be successful in the market, um, but it's going to require regulatory approval to get it where it needs to be. Based on your experience, what's your process of having worked with the FDA? I hear a myriad of different opinions. Some people say don't even start with the FDA until you're well ahead and you have your data and it's kind of your last step. Other people say, oh, you should start with them at the very beginning and make sure you understand what data they expect and want from you.
Yeah. The advice I give my clients is it's changed over the years because it is expensive to go to market with something. Uh, and it does. There's a sunk cost to do clinical trials and things like that. And I'm speaking from more of my expertise is on devices, not pharmaceuticals. And so I've developed and designed diagnostic equipment as well as just therapeutic equipment. But lately, the advice I give clients is that if you're far enough along and you've got a good set of data that you could actually present to the FDA, you can do what's called a preliminary investigative phone call with a reviewer that would be in the division that you're going to be submitting your 510K application to. And that discussion is it's kind of one of these things. What if we went to market with this product that does the following things, and you explain to the FDA examiner that how the product works, what patient population you're going to be using that on, and then you have a Q&A with this person that is all preliminary before you would ever do a filing. And that investigative discussion can save you a lot of time and money. And most of the time, if you get a good reviewer that's pretty experienced, and I always tell people, ask them how long they've been with the FDA and what's their background, and how many 510K applications have they actually approved or gone through. So that 1 hour or 2 hour discussion, and you can call them up again if you have additional questions, can save you a lot of time and a lot of money. And it can also give you more laser focused direction on what data sets do I actually need to put together to submit to the FDA to show that the product is safe and efficacious. So does that make sense, Robert?
Yeah, very much so. I appreciate that. Um, let's talk a little bit about because I see on your profile you've got quite a experience with international distribution. We have a lot of members within Inventor. Those are based in the U.S. Those are based in Europe. That the European startups want to come to North America. They think maybe the U.S. market is much larger and I don't know if they think it's easier to get into or not. It seems it's difficult no matter where you are. But any advice for those that are looking to branch out overseas?
Absolutely. I think now in this day and age, I've had a lot of clients, they launch in Europe before they launch in the United States because sometimes the FDA process here is slower than the process it is to get approval, let's say, in Europe. And a lot of what I'd call the European markets that you are going to focus and target, they're very familiar with what's going on in the United States in terms of therapy and diagnostics, particularly for sleep and respiratory. So I have some clients that have chosen that pathway to set up distribution, get approval first in the European nations, and then eventually they get approval here in the United States and commercialize the product here locally. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, and the patients are the same. I mean, the database and the populations and demographics are very similar. Uh, the areas where you might have more difficulty getting into, like Japan, it has a very extensive kind of an FDA kind of formulation that goes on there, and it can take actually longer to get into Japan than it would take to get into the United States in terms of an FDA or an approval to market something. So yeah, I would totally support or advise at least my clients to take a look at commercializing something over in Europe. And the other thing too, your sales and distribution pathways are pretty similar to what you'd be setting up here in the United States.
Um, Actually, I've got a couple questions. It looks like you've done a lot of work in sleep therapy technology. Um, in today's market, I'm seeing a lot of sleep support therapies products, apps that would come under the wellness category. Can you maybe talk a little bit about, and with say sleep as an example in particular, when that product, is okay to stay out of the regulatory process, and when and at what step it really needs to go to the FDA, from a business planning and a go-to market strategy.
Hmm. Yeah, it's the dividing line is the claims that you're trying to make. If they're therapeutic in nature, and specifically the product says it treats sleep apnea, for instance, you've crossed over into an area where you must have an FDA 510(k) approval to make those types of claims. So I'm working with a client now that makes a ring, like a wearable. So this is something that I've been involved with over the last 3 or 4 years, is looking at watches and rings and different types of wearables that can pick up, and they're fairly sensitive and specific to things like motion, snoring, sleep apnea, but they don't make those types of claims. They're, like you said, Robert, they're in the health and wellness space, so they can say, use marketing terms that maybe insinuate that it's going to be maybe therapeutic in some ways or diagnostic in some ways, but they don't come out and make really specific claims like you could if you had the FDA 510(k) approval. So that's how they get around that. Like, for instance, there's a company called Aura out of Finland that makes a pretty nice wearable ring,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it can give you, your blood oxygen saturation. It can look at how many hours you've slept, and Ultrahuman is another company that's based out of San Diego that I work with, and they've launched now it's like a hub. It's called Human, and it picks up and can detect noise. So if you're snoring or whatever, it detects the quality of air that's in your house. It picks up like CO2 and a whole bunch of other things, as well as it can, if you wear the ring that they have, it couples up, or it pairs up with the hub, and can show you some really incredible data and information about your sleep patterns. But they don't make any like specific medical claims.
So with that, is it then it's then up to the user to do self-diagnosis to a certain extent and decide
Yeah,
what data is kind of helpful for them.
I kind of compare it to if you feel like you have COVID, but you don't really know, you can, get these little kits that you can use at home. But even the kits have disclaimers on them that you really should seek the advice of a physician to determine and do more testing to see if you have the flu or if you have COVID or whatever. So, and it's kind of the same thing with home pregnancy testing, and a lot of things that you can use at home, even a blood pressure cuff. I mean, it's, even though it shows you may have hypertension or some kind of blood pressure issue, even on the box or the labeling, it says you should really consult with your physician to determine what's the best treatment for blood pressure.
Actually, let's talk about market validation for a minute. What how much data and how many pilots are necessary? Whether it's a therapeutic or even a versus a wellness product. At what point can a startup feel good about um, the data that it has and its pilot testing to really then take it to a next level?
My advice for clients that are getting into either the health and wellness space, or even if you're going to go for a 510(k), is have an N of at least 30 patients, and do a really good job of collecting data on those patients that you're going to be able to utilize in the claims that you make from a marketing standpoint or your FDA 510(k) submission. Obviously, the larger the database is, the more accurate it becomes. And what we talked about earlier, that a lot of clients that I have now are using, is they're running this data through some AI formulations to ensure accuracy, sensitivity, specificity, and things like that. So But the minimum would be, I would say, 30 to give you the comfort and the knowledge, at least, to make claims that you feel are valid about what your product is actually offering or doing, either from a diagnostic standpoint and or from a therapy standpoint.
So that's 30 individuals or 30 trials?
30 individuals. And
Okay. Well, I
to
mean
answer,
that seems on the low side.
yeah, it is low, but if you think about it, let's say you did, in the way you can ensure a higher degree of accuracy is use the same protocol, but do the trial or the pilot in 3 different centers. And what you learn from that is you learn the nuances from one facility to another in terms of the way the nurses work or the doctors or the clinicians and how they apply your product to different patients. So if you did 10, 10, and 10 with an N of 30, you can do a nice comparison then of, well, hospital A, they had these issues with the product in terms of the way they turned it on or the way they worked it, or and you have them fill out, a post survey about, the quality of the product, how it performed, any issues they had with educating people how to use it during the pilot, and then you can compare that to facility B to facility C, and what you should see is a common point with the outcomes from the patient part of it that you're measuring. But the other part of it you'll see is what can we do to actually make the GUI or the interface actually more intuitive and better so that everybody across all, an entire huge population of hospitals and clinics all have basically the same experience.
When it comes to companies just trying to get their first their first patients, their first trials, and let's assume they don't. Would you say it's almost imperative for a startup to have a physician or a nurse as part of their team if they're going to work in healthcare?
Well, I think it's important to have a clinical person. Most of the companies that I advise, I encourage them to find some medical person, a nurse or a physician that would be part of the staff, or a consultant or a 1099. But I think you need that kind of balance, particularly if you let engineers just design something. It's very engineering driven. If you have an engineer that's combined with the input of a clinician, then you have something that's more balanced. It's designed and developed from an engineering standpoint, but the clinician can give them you know great advice about how the product's used, how to make it easier to use, what's more comfortable for the clinician and the patient, and how the device is utilized. So things like that. And I find the more successful companies have a medical director full time on staff, or someone that they can at least bring into regular and routine meetings during the projects.
And what have you seen work best for uh, for those startups that are early and trying to just get their first partnerships and patient experience with a hospital? What's their best way to get their foot in the door? Because that is a very very hard thing within healthcare, is even to get somebody's attention.
It is difficult because hospitals do not want to take any risk with trialing or trying something particularly that's new. And if it's a pioneering type of a technology, that even creates more red flags. So that's why it's helpful if you do have someone that works at a hospital, that's trusted and respected in the community, a doctor or a nurse, that can go to their department heads and say, I'm working with this company, as full disclosure, and they're looking for a pilot site. Could we set up a meeting with them? They'd like to come in and show you the product. And if it doesn't have a 510K on it, then you have to do what's called an investigational review board type of a pilot. So that's a third party that actually implements and helps construct the protocols and oversees this. And then you have to have a bunch of different documents signed for risk and safety mitigation, in case there's an accident with the product. So you have to be, show that you have proof of insurance. Typically, it's up to $1 million per incident. Sometimes it lasts for as much as 5 million. But for a startup, that's why I said earlier it can be quite expensive just to get to a point of where you're trying to prove a product, and you need to do clinical trials, and you actually need to use this on patients. So that's where that's a big cost of getting a startup going.
So, how do you advise? This is a hard one. How do you advise startups on whether they should continue to keep at it? Um, again, getting into healthcare is so difficult. There are lots and lots and lots of good ideas. Um, there are even very many good products that never see the light of day for X number of reasons. At what point do you advise a company that, look, this, it's just not going to work, or this is definitely worth continuing and do whatever it takes?
Mm-hmm. Boy, Robert, that is that is a tough question, because many of my clients, they're so passionate about what they're working on, and they believe in it so much. It's hard to tell them to this really is probably not going to work, and it's going to take you a lot longer to get it to market. And by the time you do get to market, your burn rate or your sunk cost is going to be 4x of what you anticipated it to be. And that's where investors and even people that are working at a startup company get a little bit nervous. It's like when you kind of project you're going to be in the market in 2 years, you hit that 2 year point and you've spent $2 million, and your investors, which you have quarterly typically meetings and give them an update on it, and you're not even at the 50-yard line, let's say. And so they get a little bit nervous and start wondering, well, and you start asking them for more money because you need more money to do additional prototypes or clinical trials. That's where things get a little bit shaky. And I've seen, like you said, a lot of good ideas pretty much just sit in a box in a corner, and there's the business is closed sign on the door.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, I think almost everyone that I know that works in healthcare is doing it because they want to see a positive impact
Yeah,
on people at the end of the day. Um, but you have to make a living too, and
right.
it's very, very hard. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
balance.
Before I change tack a little bit and close up a little bit, what any last thoughts, points about healthcare in general? How you see the market 10 years from now? What's your best advice for anyone thinking about this space?
Well, from the product development or therapy standpoint, I always kind of hold fast to a rule that you've got to have, if you have a solution for a problem, make sure you really, in theory, test it out as best you can before you go to the next step, and try to take a lot of time to seriously consider, does this product really have a right to be in the marketplace, and challenge yourself, and go, talk to some different people outside of your own, circle of friends that can actually challenge you and say, well, have you thought about doing it this way, or have you thought about changing this particular aspect of your product to do this, and other things. So that upfront investigative work will pay off big time if you take the input and you get the right input from the right people, and don't try to develop everything internally with just a couple people, like 2 or 3 engineers. I call it drinking your own bathwater, or drinking your own Kool-Aid, because everybody in this little circle of people go, yeah, you're great, this is
Yeah,
fantastic, let's keep spending money on this project. And then when you finally hit the reality of taking it outside the four walls of your little business, and you have doctors and nurses and people start poking holes in it, you got to have you got to be sensitive, and you've got to take their input. You've got to be a good listener, and don't talk a lot. Just listen and learn.
so aside from all this, you're a musician as well. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I started my music career when I was pretty young. I was in Texas, and my dad was, like I said, in the Air Force, and we were stationed in Fort Worth. And someone heard me singing in church, and they came up to my mom and dad and said, would your son be interested maybe in being in the Texas Voice Choir? And my mom and dad said, well, sure. What's that entail? And we never realized it was a really professional, great group. So I did an audition, and I got to be a tenor singer in basically their choir, and then moved into Broadway musicals. And I was with the Texas Voice Choir for about 2 years, and learned a lot. But then from there, in junior high and high school, I started playing in rock and roll bands, and started playing sax, flute, harmonica, and percussion.
Oh,
And
wow.
uh, currently, I'm touring with a blues band on the West Coast right now. We do pretty much authentic blues from the Delta to Chicago. We try to represent the roots of the blues that came out of the Delta area, particularly from the 1920s and 30s, and then it progressed up into Chicago. So we cover artists that are from the 30s, 40s, and 50s primarily.
Right, right. So, and do you still sing?
Yeah, I still sing, and in this band I pretty much play harmonica and sing lead and backup vocals.
And can people find your music online anywhere?
Oh yeah, we've got a ton of videos on YouTube. It's the name of the band is the Barn Owl Blues Band.
The Barn Owl Blues Band.
Yeah, Barn Owl Blues Band.
Okay.
And yeah, we're on YouTube. We're actually in the studio recording a new record. We'll have out the first of next year. It'll be an EP of all original blues songs that we've been writing.
Well, that's fantastic. And how many concerts a year do you normally play now?
We do about 5 to 6 shows a month.
Okay. Wow. Well, that keeps you very busy.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. A lot of fun. It creates a good balance for me. Being in the medical business can be a little bit hectic. So the music side of it really is it's fun, and it's something I look forward to doing and performing live in front of an audience.
That's fantastic. And any upcoming shows before the holiday?
Yeah, I've got a show coming up on the 21st. It's out in the desert near Palm Springs at an old gas station that typically a lot of bikers go to. So that's always
I
a fun gig.
well,
And then I've
well,
got a
my
new.
my wife and I just drove to Joshua Tree for the first time
Oh,
back
yeah,
in September. So and I remember driving by Palm Springs, never having been there. I never driven out to that part of California before from LA.
it's mysterious and beautiful, and it's just it's a unique place in the world. That's for sure.
Well, Ron, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. I appreciate your time and your expertise, and all we can do is tell people to keep at it. And if you have a good, it's sometimes you're the only person that believes in yourself.
Yeah,
Even significant others or close friends, might not see it. But if it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
yep. Like Arnold Palmer said, the road to success is always under construction.
Ron, thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.